Signature Talk 2: Deep Practice, Turning Development into Measurable Performance. This is a short taster. The core idea is that most skills, learning and development doesn't translate into results. This keynote taster shows why and how to fix that. Audience takeaways: how to design skills learning that delivers a return on investment, embedding reflection, application, and accountability, and turning skills development into business impact. Why the need for this topic? Well, as you can see, headlines in 2025-2026 clearly indicates that skills are important and growing in value. We're seeing a move away from theory qualifications to a skills-first approach. We're seeing a demand to plug skills gaps quickly. We are seeing a demand to reskill and upskill to fill these gaps. We are seeing a new demand for human skills, which we used to be called soft skills. But if we don't do this right, we will end up with skills theory, but no deep impact. Robert Keegan, a cognitive developmental psychologist, says there is a mismatch between conceptual complexity and societal expectations. In other words, certain skills are complex and there is no quick fix. Societal expectations. So how do we develop skills that delivers impact? Well, I will introduce you to three key ideas in this taster talk. It takes practice with a coach or master. It involves deep reflection, and it depends on cognitive development. None of the quick fixes in policy and practice will deliver real impact. The brain is a muscle, and it requires the correct exercises to support continuing development. So looking at this from a neurological point of view, high-level skills demanded by society currently requires the correct developmental environment. Again, Keegan suggests there is a gap between capability and requirements based on cognitive development. In other words, some higher order skills requires a reconstruction of the self, and this requires the correct holding space and appropriate mentors, coaches, masters to help and guide. In a book by Daniel Cole, The Talent Code, he says skill is a cellular insulation that wraps neural circuits and that grows in response to certain signals. We'll go into that now in a little bit more detail. In his book, and we have a diagram of what these neurons look like and the myelin which wraps these neurons, he suggests that every movement, every thought, every feeling is a precisely timed electric signal traveling through a chain of neurons, a circuit of nerve fibers. Myelin is the insulation that wraps these nerve fibers, and when it does so, it increases signal strength, signal speed, and signal accuracy. And this includes skill development. The more we fire a particular circuit, the more we practice that skill, the more myelin optimizes that circuit, and the stronger, the faster, and the more fluent our movements and thoughts become. How do we learn? How do we develop skills, particularly higher order skills? Think about riding a bicycle. Hours of study and watching YouTube videos of people riding bicycles won't make you competent at riding a bicycle. It's implicit knowledge gained through guided experience. The opposite is also true. If the incorrect action and skill is developed, to undo that signal, which is what we call unlearning, again, it takes time, and a novice may not even be aware that they are creating the wrong action, behavior, or skill. Again, guidance is required in the concept of unlearning. We are back to capability. Cole continues. The more the nerves fire, which is about practice, right, under supervision, the more myelin wraps around it. The more myelin wraps around it, the faster the signals travel, increasing velocity up to 100 times over signals sent through an insulated fiber. Think, for example, of reading speed. So, if we think about these fibers like a single road versus a highway, the amount of traffic and the speed that traffic can travel at is really important. Signals have to travel at the right speed, arrive at the right time, and myelination is the brain's way of controlling that speed. In other words, avoiding traffic jams. Skill development in conjunction with cognitive development, the actual development of the brain, requires challenge. For example, as muscles develop in a gym, we have to increase the weights we are lifting. Not enough, no challenge. And this means, therefore, no development. Too much challenge, this could lead to cognitive overload. Again, no development. The process requires skilled practitioners as mentors, guides, coaches. It is not just about knowledge transfer or acquisition. It is about facilitated learning, especially monitoring the learning space for pace and challenge. Here is another example from the science of learning that illustrates the monitoring and holding of the learning space. A key outcome of a supported environment, clearly, is motivation. Motivation also has a 25% increase in capability. But lack that environment, lack that guidance and support in that environment, you will find that there is a rejection, a hopelessness, an evading, and a defiance. Onto reflection as a key aspect of skill development and cognitive development. We know the phrase, only a fool does the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Sadly, we are creatures of habit. How do we develop thinking about our thinking? This is called metacognition. If I knew what to do, I would have done it. But because I didn't know what to do, I didn't do it. See, I needed insight. How do I know what I don't know? How do I cognitively perceive what is beyond my capability? Can I take a step back and think about my thinking? The same applies about, can I take a step back and feel about my feelings? Great work by Jennifer Moon on this illustrates what she calls surface learning, a non-reflective approach resonating with stages 1 and 2 of Keegan's cognitive development stages. It involves noticing, it involves making sense, but it doesn't progress further. What the skills first expectations require for skills like creativity and criticality is deep learning, a deeply reflective process associated with Keegan's stage 2 and 3 of cognitive development. Not just seeing, but really seeing, being able to decenter in the reconstruction of the self. Keegan suggests that the stages of cognitive development are sequential. In other words, you can't progress from stage 1 to stage 2, for example, until you fully complete the previous stage. And these stages 2 onwards, could take up to 10 to 20 years in terms of brain development. Emotional intelligence happens simultaneously, but again, thinking about it, it could reflect from what could be surface learning to what could be deeper structures of learning linked to cognitive development and capability. In other words, my level of self-awareness will have a direct impact on my social awareness and empathy, which impacts the level of self-regulation based on societal values and expectations, etc. Again, these are complex processes and requires time and the correct mentorship and guidance. So here we have Kegan's cognitive development stages. There are links with other theories such as Erikson, Kohlberg's moral development, and Chickering's identity development. What's unique though with Kegan is that he suggests we cannot progress from stage 1 to stage 2 until we complete the cognitive development required at stage 1, and then we transition into stage 2. We take stage 1 and stage 2 with us as we then continue to develop to transition to stage 3. You'll notice that 6% of the adult population is found in stage 2. The majority, 58%, is found in stage 3, and 35% is found in stage 4. Only 1% of the adult population is in stage 5, self-transforming mind. Example of some advanced skills from the Work Economic Forum report that are relevant here include, for example, critical thinking, cognitive flexibility, adaptability, ethical judgment, teamwork, emotional intelligence, creativity, lifelong learning, problem solving, motivation, cultural intelligence, and self-awareness. A talk or a course can unpack these in more detail. This is a great summary model by Sprague and Stewart of the skills development process. A novice is made aware of their lack of capability, the unconscious incompetence, moving to conscious incompetence. In other words, this is where skill development is needed and begins to take place. However, as we've already seen, if not managed correctly in terms of a growth environment, or if not in the correct cognitive developmental stage, this insight will be rejected or resisted. If accepted and developed with the guidance of a master, over time they can develop the capability required and will then act without even thinking about it. For example, think about driving a car from when you first started learning to how you instinctively drive after years of experience. So to summarize, advanced skill development requires the correct regular practice with a coach or master. It involves deep reflection as the self is reconstructed, and it requires appropriate cognitive development for lasting change. Please feel free to contact me to discuss how you could benefit from some of these ideas in this taster. I am a job whisperer, a job translator if you would like. The core idea in this taster session, in this signature talk, most skills, learning and development doesn't translate into results. This keynote shows why and how to fix that. The audience takeaways: how to design skills learning that deliver a return on investment, embedding reflection, application, and accountability, and finally, turning skills development into a business impact.